Hello, you're listening to Sky News ClimateCast with me, Tom Heap, and this week we're talking about the battle of the farms, the cattle farm versus the solar farm. We know that we need a heck of a lot more green energy if we're going to tackle climate change. To meet the government's clean electricity targets, we need 5 times as much solar by 2035, and Labour have similar targets. But should this come at the expense, in some places, of the traditional farming way of life? Let's go and find out.
Come on then.
We're in the heart of Derbyshire, near Ilkeston, on a beautiful frosty morning. On the muddy ground, all the little pinnacles of dirt have gone rock hard, and there are some really nice icy puddles around here. And I'm in a field with Andrew Dakin, and there's a few cattle behind us here, Andrew. Just describe the cattle that I'm looking at here. I think there's some Limousins there. Are there a bull?
There's a Limousin bull, some Aberdeen Angus, some Hereford crosses, and a Simmental. So, yeah, a mixture of breeds.
And these are for beef, aren't they? And up in your yard, I've seen the bulk of your herd up there. How's the beef business going at the moment?
It's just improving quite nicely at the moment. I think there's a shortage of beef in the country, and knowing the situation worldwide, imports are struggling to get in. And this is why we need food security.
Well, this is a classic rolling farm landscape here. Although we're in Derbyshire, we're not kind of in the Peak District here, are we? We're a little bit lower than that. You've got a 110-acre farm here, and we're standing in the heart of it. Nice view. What is actually out there in the distance? I can see.
That is Cricht Stand.
That's a long way. That must be.
Andrew is a tenant farmer, meaning he doesn't own the land, and his landlords want to turn the pasture he and his family have farmed for 94 years into a solar farm.
The landlord's agent approached me one day, come for a meeting, and didn't say what it was about. And then he got round to the subject of he'd been approached by a solar company, and they wanted to take the land for a solar farm. And I asked him how many fields he wanted, and he just turned around to me and said, well, potentially all of it. And, well, basically, he could have knocked me down with a feather.
If the solar developers get their go-ahead alongside your landlord, what will this area of land that we're in be like?
Well, it'll just be a sea of solar panels, and the beautiful scenery and view that we've got at this end of the country will be gone, and it will never look the same again. And you know, it's just heartbreaking to even think about it.
What, if any, role does it leave for you and your cattle?
Well, the cattle will no longer be in the fields because it'll be taken over by solar panels, and my livelihood and my life will be destroyed.
But you'll be able to stay in the house, I gather, but the house, I've seen the map, will be amongst a sea of panels. Would you want to do that?
Not really, no. Unfortunately, my mum's got Alzheimer's, so I don't really want to be moving here. I'm going to be stuck where I am in an environment that I would no longer want to be in. No, it would never be the same again for me.
This hasn't always been farmland. It was a mine, an open cast mine, and indeed the landscape shape itself has been changed by that. So it hasn't always been agricultural. There have been industrial uses here, and maybe solar is just the modern one.
The thinking behind the open casting was that it was always going to be restored back to a better condition than what it was before, after the first open casting, and a bit more of a created a diverse landscape, as you can see with the tree planting in various locations, and a wetlands area down in the bottom, but still got an agricultural use, whereas if it was solar panels, it would never look the same natural environment that it now looks, or even previously looked.
I think solar panels are technically temporary, and they may well offer some environmental enhancement around that. Does that sway you at all?
Not in the slightest. It just looks very industrial to me. It's not in keeping with the landscape or the natural environment, and consequently the curlews, the lapwings, the skylarks and the brown hares, which will be then fenced out by 10-foot high deer fencing, which will be electrified, it just does not bode well for the rest of the wildlife and the eco of the countryside.
What would a solar farm future mean for you?
It would mean the end of my farming career, the end of everything I've ever loved doing, and I'd be lost without it. And so, yeah, it doesn't even bear comprehending.
How much is this a way of life rather than just a job?
It's everything to me, absolutely everything. Yeah.
How do you feel treated personally by all this?
Well, I feel very let down, and saying that we've been here, me and my family, for 94 years, and it's just very difficult to comprehend that we've been treated like this. There will be a certain amount of compensation on offer, but to me, money is not everything, and I enjoy my lifestyle and my livelihood, what I've done all my life, and I wouldn't want to swap that for anything.
As we were walking down here, we talked about how rare the frosts are here, so I guess you accept that climate change is happening. Perhaps we need things like solar panels to help address it.
I still think solar panels are better put in other areas, like on house roofs, on factory roofs, brownfield sites, far better than spoiling the countryside.
Is that the thing in the end? We need to decide kind of what our farming land is for, in your view?
I think farmland is for farming, and I think that's how it should always be. But when big financial incentives come along, people are swayed by the money, and that's what it's all about.
Well, farmland, I mean, it isn't always for farming. It's taken for housing, it's taken for roads, for railways. I mean, change does happen, doesn't it? And maybe this is just one that needs to happen now.
Well, that is very true, but at the end of the day, if things keep disappearing at the rate they are doing, there won't be any countryside left, and they're not making any land anymore.
Well, how fast are they disappearing? Currently, only 0.1% of farmland is taken up by solar panels, and even with government plans to scale up solar in line with its net zero target, the total take-up is expected to reach about 0.3%. In other words, a very small amount. But in areas with good grid connections, it's likely some productive farmland will go under panels. The landowners of Andrew's farm haven't applied for planning permission yet for the solar farm, and they told us they don't want to comment on a private matter. Meanwhile, Andrew has found plenty of willing allies in his fight. The community have organised a town hall meeting and a social media campaign to try and save the farm.
We're walking back towards the farm now, and the ground's pretty rough and icy still. I'm with Georgia Hubbard, who's from nearby and part of the community who are uneasy about this. Tell me where you live, Georgia.
I live in Heanor, so I'm just the next town over. I've known Andrew for many, many years. He's a huge part of the community, and I just wanted to get involved and help where I can, really.
Why do you think there's a battle to be fought here?
Andrew is a massive, massive player in the local schools, the local businesses. He's been known around the villages and the towns as Farmer Andrew for as long as we can remember.
What would be so wrong about walking amongst solar panels?
I think we're really, really lucky to live in a place that we do. The Derbyshire countryside is beautiful. We don't want to lose that to solar panels that wouldn't be found here otherwise.
Well, you say that, but this used to be a mined landscape. So the idea that this has always been a rural idyll is not really true.
No, it did, but it's been rural agricultural landscape for as long as Andrew's been here. It's fields that we've lived amongst and walked through. The main issue I have with the proposal is Andrew's a small business. He's a local farmer, and it's big multi-million multinational companies that can come and decide that they want to use his land for their own purposes, and I don't think that's right that Andrew has no protection.
The decision is actually being made by the landlord to go ahead with it, who is someone who lives here.
Yeah, for financial basis, I would argue that...
Lots of decisions get made for financial reasons. I mean, it's not that unusual, is it?
No, but I think the reason the community are so up in arms is because they know Andrew so well, and we know what he does for the local school children that come and see his farm. They get to meet animals, they get to come and spend time here. They know the benefit that he has to local community markets, the local food chain in our area, and we don't want to see his livelihood and his business lost, and the opportunities that brings to residents that we wouldn't get if this was a solar panel farm.
Well, you might get to learn, something about solar panels, maybe something about wildlife. They'll plant interesting, strips of cover and new woodlands and things like that. So
I think as well, nobody in this whole process, everybody is in agreement that we need solar panels. Nobody's arguing against that. Everybody agrees that green energy is the way forward. We're 100% all in line with that. The problem with it is putting it on agricultural land, on a local business, on a local residents' land. They can go elsewhere, and it's unfair that somebody who has lived here for years and years and years, has provided so much benefit to the community.
you used the word local a couple of times there. Is that not the giveaway that in the end this is a NIMBY protest? It's not in my backyard, not in my field.
Well, we've had quite a lot of backlash from when we first started the campaign. Lots of kind of people seeing it and thinking, you just don't want this because you don't want to look at it at your back house. And I do get where that's come from, but it's not about not looking at it. It's about the purpose of that land and why that land is there. That land is not there for solar panels, and it's not right that somebody and a company and a financial kind of agreement can be made that takes that away for other purposes. And we would be arguing for this land whether it had houses backing onto it and we didn't want it here, or whether there was no houses here. The point is not it's ugly to look at. It's not fair and it's not right that is lost because somebody wants to make money off it.
Is this something about the sort of intrinsic, almost moral worth of farmland as opposed to other uses?
I think so. That's why I'm kind of part of this campaign. I think the moral side of the argument, it's just not right. It's not fair. It shouldn't be happening.
Already this year we've seen an unusually warm winter and storms and floods batter parts of the UK. And it's a really stark reminder that climate change is here right now and in some cases already damaging farming, and we have to do something about it. Chris Hewitt is Chief Executive of Solar Energy UK.
Chris, is it appropriate to be turfing farmers off their land for whom it's not only their livelihood, it's their life?
Well, the biggest threat to food security in this country is climate change, and if we don't tackle climate change and really reduce our fossil fuel use, then a lot of farmland is going to be lost to drought and other effects. So we absolutely have to do that. We also have to find the most appropriate sites. So yes, there's a balance to be struck.
But when it comes to the most appropriate sites, don't you have to be sensitive to the people who are making a living there currently?
Of course, and I can point to many farmers around the country who've included solar into their lives, into their businesses, and that's actually helped them continue food production by adding another revenue stream.
Isn't there a danger that you begin to sort of lose public sympathy for solar if you're seen, to push people out of a job?
Actually, what we've seen in our opinion polling is amongst those who are self-declaring as living close to a solar farm, only 10% oppose them, 40% are strongly in favour, and another 30% in favour of them.
So you think this idea that people don't like solar panels near them in the countryside is a bit of a myth?
I think it's overblown. It's not always going to please everyone all the time, but actually the vast majority of people who live in the areas of solar farms are perfectly happy with them.
When solar panels appear on a farm, does it have to be the end of farming?
Absolutely not, no. Solar is integrated into agriculture, so we've got members who've got 40 or 50% of their solar farms are grazed by sheep. Also, what we see is that land is taken out of intensive production, but you see nature recovery, you see biodiversity growth.
Can we achieve our solar goals solely on places like roofs?
We need to decarbonise the whole system. We need solar on roofs, we need solar in farms, we need wind power, we need battery storage. Those are the three big technologies that we need to deploy at scale.
And for those like Andrew who we've seen in our film who are affected by this, what can you say to them? Is it just tough? The world is changing.
I think all of these changes in land management have to be addressed very, very sensitively, and there'll clearly needs to be compensation in some cases. But in the end, we are in a climate emergency, and we do need to deploy these technology very quickly because, as I said, climate change is the greatest threat to food security. If we don't solve that, then the farms are not going to be viable in the future.
So what will our land look like in the future? Nationally, the land taken up for golf courses is more than the amount used for solar. In fact, the land we use for panels is roughly the same as what we use to grow Christmas trees. But that's still thousands and thousands of acres, and as we aim for net zero, more farmers are going to get unwanted phone calls about the future of their farm.
It's becoming ever more common, Tom, so we have members from the Tenant Farmers Association who ring us almost on a weekly basis to say they found out for the first time that there's a solar scheme planned for their farm, and it's the first time they've heard about it and they want some advice, and we're talking about thousands of acres here.
George Dunn is Chief Executive at the Tenant Farmers Association.
They're losing their businesses, losing their livelihoods, losing their homes in many cases, and they do absolutely feel powerless to do anything about that.
Obviously difficult for them. Do you think this matters sort of more widely? Is there something we're sort of getting wrong here in your view?
Well, it does, because we need to be concerned about things like food security. We need to be concerned about things like environmental management of land. And we're seeing an awful lot of land being taken out of food production, being taken out of agricultural production, and that's causing issues for landscape and biodiversity as well as food security issues.
Do we as a country, and possibly the sector, have to accept that we need more clean, green energy? We've got huge targets for solar growth. Can't be all met from roofs. Some land is going to have to go under solar.
Well, no, I would disagree that we can't use roofs more productively to meet the requirements that we've got. And we've also got wind energy.
I mean, the government wants 5 times as much solar as we've got now. We just don't have the roofs for that, do we?
Well, no, I think we do, because, and obviously I'm no expert in terms of the way in which generation of power operates, but I know there's a lot of dissipation when you have a large site which is then transporting power over vast distances. You lose that loss of power if you have it more locally and you generate it locally and you use it locally. So to our mind, that's the best approach. And we just don't think it's been looked at appropriately because it's easy to chase these grid connections.
As you know, some of our farmland isn't that good. Isn't it a good idea to put solar panels, which are a very good converter of sunlight into energy, on that land?
Well, it's easy to say some of our farmland isn't that good, but actually some of that farmland are grazed by cattle and sheep, where the progeny of those animals go down the hill to be further fattened for the marketplace. So they are a very important part of the chain.
You mentioned sharing between different uses within a farm. I've seen that with sheep. Do you think they should be investigating if it can be, for instance, combined with cattle, make the panels a bit higher and the stands more robust?
Well, I think some of the solar farm operators have found actually sheep to be problematic when they are grazing between those panels. I think having very large bovines running around those panels as well could have issues. But in terms of land sharing and sharing with solar, we are very much looking at how we can use farm buildings much more progressively in terms of those roof spaces, which are already pointing at the sky anyway.
It sounds tough to say, particularly when you're looking at someone like Andrew, for whom farming is his, not only his livelihood, but his life. But aren't we going to have to see some changes, and this is going to affect some land if we're going to meet our clean energy commitments?
Change is always with us. There's nothing as constant as change. So yes, of course we need to see change, but we need to see how that change properly takes into consideration the impact that has on individuals.
And give me a flavour of some of the things these individuals say to you when they're being, if you like, threatened or they see the prospect of this.
There's a whole range. There's a whole range from anger, and people are, really got the bit between their teeth and they're really going to go for it and make sure that they protect their businesses, right the way through to people who are in tears, literally in tears, on the phone, seeing their years of business, years of investment, years of input to that holding being lost. And it's the whole range of emotion.
That gut-wrenching emotion is definitely something farmer Andrew can relate to, as his future hangs in the balance.
I've been here all my life. I've never been on a holiday since I was 15, and that's not because I couldn't go on holiday. It's because I love being on the farm, and consequently, with that in mind, I just don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah. It's in you. It's not beside you. It's in you. The farm.
It's actually in me. It's in my blood. So, yeah, that's basically. I don't know what I'd do without the farm, and going to the market and talking to my farmer friends and about our experiences the previous week and what we've done. That would all be gone, and life would never be the same again.
This one is a really tricky balance, because you've got an energy transition that most people think is necessary, is a good thing. We need more renewable energy. We need more solar energy. And whilst we need much, much more of it on roofs, it is likely that some of it is going to have to come from our fields. But you've got that classic thing of individuals suffering, individuals' livelihoods, and in the case of a farmer like Andrew, his whole kind of identity, his whole kind of self is bound up with being a farmer. Energy transitions are painful. There was part of Andrew's land that used to be an open cast coal mine, and we know the angst that the nation went through as we moved away from coal mining a few decades ago. If there is a concluding thought here, I think it's something about sensitivity, something about compensation when it comes to individuals like this losing out, and also I think we have to be careful about using some of the most productive farmland for solar energy, because if it really is good farmland, all you're doing is exporting that requirement for food somewhere else in the world, and that in itself has environmental impacts. As we make this energy transition, a lot of people want to make it a just transition, and it probably doesn't feel like that for individuals like Andrew. Well, that's it for this ClimateCast. The producers were Gemma Watson in Derbyshire, and the whole thing was pulled together by Emma Ray Woodhouse.